That sound.
Good morning. Welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. I'm Eileen, I'm your minister, and I'm so glad to be with you today. Before we begin our service this morning, I just have one quick announcement, which is that next week, we will be worshiping in person in our sanctuary, as well as here on Zoom and live on YouTube. So you could come to this same Zoom link, you could go to our YouTube channel and watch live there, or you could come join us in church. We want to ask you that if you're an unvaccinated adult, you choose one of the ways of worshiping at home and not in person. And we want to ask you to wear a mask no matter what, if you come to worship with us in church. We will need folks who are coming to sign up to RSVP to church. And there is a link where you can do that in your chat right now. We'll also put that link out in the weekly newsletter, and we'll put it out more broadly in different ways. We don't expect that we will have too many people and have to turn anyone away, but we do need to know who's coming and how many. So if you plan to come, we will be overjoyed, but we need to know ahead of time. And I hope to see you there. And with that, let's take a deep breath in and let us enter a space of worship. Time now to light our chalices. If you have a chalice or any old candle, a jack-o'-lantern will do. Let's light them together as we recite our chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. I want to start by wishing you all a very happy Halloween. Now, I come from a family that really loves Halloween. We have what some might call a flair for the dramatic, and this is really the perfect time of year to indulge that sort of thing. So my younger brothers, when they got to be too old for little kid Halloween dramatics like trick-or-treating or elementary school costume parties, they still felt a longing to be part of the festivities. So every Halloween in their teenage years, they put on what they called the show on Halloween night as small children came begging candy. The first time, I believe they dressed themselves up like scarecrows, with straw sticking out of their sleeves and out of the bottoms of baggy pants. And they put plastic pumpkins over their heads. Then they slumped on the front lawn to look like seasonal decorations. And then as innocent children approached the house, they leapt up to scare them. And the following year, they made actual scarecrows and propped them up on the lawn where they had been previously. So when slightly older and wiser children arrived and warned their small siblings, keep their eyes on the scarecrows, my brothers jumped out from behind the bushes to cause them a fright. And it escalated like this through all the years they lived at home in their teenagehood. And even though they're both in their 30s now, the effects of their drama have lingered. My parents say children from the neighborhood still approach the house cautiously for trick-or-treating, and they hear them through the windows giggling to each other. They say this is the house where they scare you on Halloween. And in a roundabout way, I do think that's why we come to church. We gather as a community to build something lasting, to offer something of ourselves that can linger long after we are gone. And with that, let's breathe deep and sing together our opening hymn, number 1001, Breaths.
ancestors' breath, in the voice of the waters. Sigh. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead have a pact with the living. They are in the woman's breast. They are in the wailing child. They are with us in our homes. They are with us in this crowd. The dead have a pact with the living. So more loving to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Sigh. Sigh.
And now it's time for a story. This morning's story is an excerpt from one of my favorite books ever, Ramona the Pest by Beverly Cleary. And it goes like this. Which, thought Ramona, liking the sound of the words. Which. As the words ran through her thoughts, Ramona began to wonder if Miss Binny could guess who she was. She ran up to her teacher and shouted in her muffled voice, "Hello, Miss Binny. I'm going to get you, Miss Binny." "Ooh, what a scary witch," said Miss Binny, rather absent-mindedly, Ramona thought. Plainly, Miss Binny was not really frightened, and with so many witches running around, she had not recognized Ramona. No, Miss Binny was not the one who was frightened. Ramona was. Miss Binny did not know who this witch was. Nobody knew who Ramona was, and if nobody knew who she wasn't anybody. "Get out of the way, old witch," Eric R. yelled at Ramona. He did not say, "Get out of the way, Ramona." Ramona could not remember a time when there was not someone near who knew who she was. Even last Halloween, when she dressed up as a ghost and went trick-or-treating with her sister, the older children, everyone seemed to know who she was. "I can guess who this little ghost is," the neighbors said as they dropped a miniature candy bar or a handful of peanuts into her paper bag. And now, with so many witches running around and still more witches on the big playground, no one knew who she was. The feeling was the scariest one Ramona had ever experienced. She felt lost inside her costume. She wondered if her mother would know which witch was which, and she thought, if her own mother didn't recognize her, that frightened Ramona even more. What if her mother forgot her? What if everyone in the whole world forgot her? With that terrifying thought, Ramona snatched off her mask, and although its ugliness was no longer the most frightening thing about it, she rolled it up so she would not have to look at it. Everyone was eager to start the parade. If Ramona did not do something quickly, she would be left behind, and she could not let such a thing happen, not when she'd waited so many years to be in a Halloween parade. Ramona took only a moment to decide what to do. She ran to her cupboard inside the kindergarten building and snatched a crayon from her box. Then she grabbed a piece of paper from the supply cupboard. Outside, she could hear the many feet of the morning and afternoon kindergartens marching off to the big playground. There was no time for Ramona's best printing, but that was all right. As fast as she could, Ramona printed her name, Ramona Q. Now the whole world would know who she was. Ramona pulled on her rubber mask, clapped her pointed hat on top of it, snapped the elastic under her chin, and ran after her class as it marched onto the big playground. She did not care if she was last in line. Yeah, I'm the baddest witch in the world, Ramona chanted as she held up her sign for all to see. Around the playground, she marched toward her mother, who was waiting on the bench. Her mother saw, pointed out to Mrs. Kemp, and waved. Ramona beamed inside her stuffy mask. Her mother recognized her. And that is the end of this morning's story. And I'd like to invite you now into the spiritual practice of generosity. This morning, as we take our offering, you can give to the church this morning through the link pasted into the chat momentarily, or you can send a check to the physical church at 3024 Cooley Road in Canandaigua. And in either case, we'd ask you to make a note that your gift is meant for this morning's offering, because we share 1/4 of our offering each season with a designated service partner. And this season's designated service partner is FoodLink. We thank you for your offering this morning. I invite you now into a time of centering and meditation, followed by shared silence. Let's get comfortable in our chairs. Take a deep breath. Let some part of you be supported by the floor, by your chair, by a table. Feel the good earth holding you up. Breathe deeply, and then take a refreshing sigh. This morning's centering words are called Halloween Costume by Steve Garnis Holmes. Inside that monster, there is a lovely child. You know that. Inside every monster is a lovely child. Do you know that? Beneath this suit, that nice outfit, beneath that street-soiled mess, is a precious child. The costumes run deep, of course, and become convincing. But you know better, right? You've learned to ignore them, right? When do you take yours off? Just be lovely. In this ribboned world, it's feathers and fabrics, it's patchwork humanity. Everything you see is the costume of the Holy One. 2 weeks ago, we shared our worship time with our two neighbor churches in Rochester at First Unitarian. I got there early to run through the worship rehearsal with the staff from all three of our congregations. And while I waited for the others to be ready, I made myself a cup of coffee in the church kitchen. Now, 6 years ago or so, I was on the staff at First Unitarian, and as I puttered around the kitchen, I experienced a haunting. Now, nothing paranormal happened. This isn't that kind of service. To be frank, this isn't that kind of church. But I had this powerful memory of the countless Sundays I had walked those same floors, poured coffee into my favorite white mug, stirred with the same spoon, a quiet little ritual before church. And on those Sundays years ago, almost without fail, the First Unitarian sexton, Will, would pop in somewhere in the middle of that process to say good morning. We would drink our coffee together and chat about our week, laugh at his terrible jokes, or talk about how our families were doing. Will's health had been poor for a long time, and he died earlier this year. So when I poured myself coffee in that familiar old kitchen, his absence was a visceral sorrow. And in some oddly holy way, being haunted by his absence was an unexpected gift, a punch in the gut offering of the impression he left here. The ghost of his early morning laughter was a signal of the love he left in the world, left in me. This sort of haunting has happened to all of us, right? It's not horror movie spooky, but it does cut right to our core, doesn't it? For any of us who have lived long enough to have known loss, which is most of us, we sometimes find that holy ghosts show up when we least expect them, or when we need them most. I used to make autumn art as a child. Maybe you've done this too, by sticking leaves to a piece of construction paper. Then I'd hang the paper in the window to be bleached by the sun. And after a few weeks, I'd remove the leaves and their outline would remain unbleached on the faded paper. And that's what these haunting moments feel like sometimes. The after image of a love so strong, it left a lasting mark forever. These impressions that beloved people or places or times have left in our hearts haunt us as the whiff of a smell that transports us to a home we haven't visited in years, a song we used to dance to in high school, the taste of that very variety of tomatoes our old neighbor used to grow. These ghosts are holy precisely because they alleviate that deep and ubiquitous fear that lingers underneath our Halloween costume tradition, that fear that Ramona knew, that our meditation spoke to, the fear that we won't ever be seen, that maybe it's possible we've masked ourselves so well, no one will ever really know us. These ghosts carry the promise that maybe we too will leave behind traces of our truest self to bless the lives of all those who continue after we leave them. The promise that at least these small and momentary resurrections are possible. Holy ghosts show up and bless us as the kind word from a neighbor on the bus remembered for decades, as our great-great-grandfather's smile showing up on our own face, as the age-old family apple pie recipe that must be baked every Thanksgiving, as the way our hand still remembers the exact shape and feeling of the one it used to hold, as the lullabies sung to us as children that will forever swell in our hearts. When my spouse and I were writing marriage vows before our wedding, one thing that felt important was to promise that we would be witness to one another's lives, that we would be there to affirm at the end of things, I see you. I have witnessed your life and it mattered. And I think, honestly, we have a pretty fundamental need as humans for this kind of loving witness. It can be big and profound, like a lifelong covenant of marriage, or tiny and seemingly inconsequential, like a smile shared with a stranger. I felt blessed to be haunted by Will's absence in that church kitchen, because it was a moment that affirmed that for however brief a time we had seen one another on those Sunday mornings, we had cared for one another in that time. We mattered. When in ways big and small, we pour love into this world, which Will did with incomparable grace. We are like Ramona with her hastily scribbled declaration. We are like mischievous graffiti artists writing into hearts wherever we go, I was here. I want to invite you to lift up your holy ghosts this morning, the memory of lost people, places, times in your life. Take a few moments to sit with what you're holding, to sit with the loss you have held. And then I want to invite you to write a word or two in the chat in honor of those losses. And once we've finished that, I'd like you to take what you need from the following slideshow, representing all manner of ghosts left behind, things you could carry with you always. So I invite you now, take a moment, take a breath, and then share with us whatever loss you carry this year.
was 21 years when I wrote this song. I'm 22 now, but I won't be for long. Time hurries on, and the leaves that are green turn to brown, and they wither with the wind, and they crumble in your hand. Once my heart was filled with the love of a girl. I held her close, but she faded in the night, like a poem I meant to write. And the leaves that are green turn to brown, and they wither with the wind, and they crumble in your hand. I threw a pebble in a brook and watched the ripples run away, and they never made a sound. And the leaves that are green turn to brown, and they wither with the wind, and they crumble in your hand. Hello, 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 hello. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. That's all there is, and the leaves that are green turn to brown.
This year, as we sit with all that we have lost, I pray that we might be visited by the holiest of ghosts. May the traces of lost love always find us, to let us know that we are seen. We have been known for who we are under all the costumery. We matter. May it be so. I invite you to join in singing our closing hymn, number 411, Part in Peace.
Part in peace with the day.
Let's extinguish our chalices. And as we do, I invite you to recite our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you for being together today. And I invite you to join us in breakout rooms as we close the service for some social time and coffee hour. So stick around if you'd like to join us in a breakout room. Whether this is your first time with us or your 1000th time, we'd love to chat.